Okay, time for a new video, and whether you are somebody new to my channel or you are returning to my channel to watch this video, it is greatly appreciated. As always, I'm filming this video in one go, so if I stumble over my words moving forwards, apologies about that, and also if the quality of this video is fairly poor as well, if there's any lag, anything like that at all, sadly it cannot be helped and hopefully it is not too much of an issue for you. This is yet another Eurovision related video here on my channel, and a video that I've had planned for about a week now. And I'm surprised I've never filmed a video like this before on my channel, truth be told. It is Eurovision Stick or Twist. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all of the nations that participated in this year's Liverpool staged competition, as well as a few countries that may or may not return for the Sweden hosted competition next spring. And I'm going to tell you whether I think that particular nation should stick with their current format of selecting an artist and song for an upcoming edition of the ESC, or whether they should twist and try something different. As always, you're very welcome to let me know your thoughts on anything that I discuss in today's video by leaving a comment. That's always nice to see, and as always there are links in the description to my other social media pages. Check them out if you so wish. I should say that I've had to close my curtains again because the light is just blinding, so hopefully the quality is not too bad for you. So I've got a little post-it note here where I'm going to be making a note of each country as I go through them, and I've got the official programme book of this year's competition to help me here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through the nations one by one and tell you what I think should happen for next year's ESC. And what I will say is that I think in most instances it's going to be stick, because if it ain't broke, it don't need fixing. Whereas if a country's form over the past couple of years hasn't been top notch, maybe it is now time to start taking more of a risk, more of a gamble, and try something different for Stockholm 2024, Gothenburg 2024, whatever it's going to be. So, first up is Norway, who of course this year were represented by Alessandra, and of course Norway use MGP, which they've used for years, and they're not going to change that. In fact, part of me thinks that they've already confirmed MGP will be back next year. I'm not entirely sure, but it's pretty obvious, we all know it. It is going to be a stick, and rightly so. They don't really need to change it. What I will say is that I'm not sure the quality of MGP has really improved a great deal over the years. It's always been fairly good, in my opinion, but obviously you're looking to improve year after year after year, and I'm not sure we've really seen a great deal of progression with MGP over the past couple of years. But we had a very good song come out on top this year. We had a very good song finish second in MGP as well, with Ulrika. And I'm sure next year there will be a few songs that get a lot of people very excited as well about Norway's chances. I've already read that Kano could be trying again to represent Norway, so that is bound to be a song that gets a lot of people talking. Moving on to Malta. Now, we have a country that I think definitely could do with changing things. Now, I don't really know what the situation is over there, but a few years ago, they were using the X Factor Malta to select an artist, and then internally selecting a song once we knew who the artist was going to be. I don't know if the X Factor Malta is still going. If not, why not? I don't know why they would have scrapped that, maybe for financial reasons, I don't really know. But it seemed to me, at the very least, that a few years ago Malta had turned a corner, because we got Michaela with Chameleon, and when I saw the lyric video for Chameleon several years ago, I was blown away. I was really, really impressed. Okay, the song finished mid-table in the end, didn't do terribly well with the public, but the juries liked it. Then we had Destiny, and she would have done well in 2020 had the contest gone ahead, and if the pandemic hadn't been a thing. And then we had Je me casse, and it was a similar story. The public weren't really on board with that song, the juries were. Nevertheless, she finished in the top 10 and got Malta's best result for years. And then they just sort of went right back to square one for reasons that I don't really understand. Maybe you can fill me in here as to why Malta decided to go back to the long-winded national final format. There's lots of great musicians in Malta, there's no doubt about it, but I just think they've gone back to a format that wasn't always the most successful, whereas Michaela, Destiny, internally selecting their entries, that seemed to be a little bit more successful, a little bit more like the way forward, if you see what I mean, in my personal opinion. Anyway, last year we had Emma Muscat, who was probably going to represent Malta at some point anyway, because she's a pretty big star, but she didn't qualify. And then this year we had the busker. And earlier this year, we all remember, it just went on and on and on, this Maltese selection. The first thing I would do is I would whittle it down to no more than 2 live shows. You only need a semi-final and a final, truth be told. The alternative option is to not have a national final whatsoever and internally select a musician. There's somebody waiting in Malta right there who I'm sure is very keen to do it. Of course, I'm talking about Aidan, who will surely represent Malta at some point. I mean, he probably would have won the Maltese selection earlier this year by a country mile had he not been controversially disqualified by the broadcaster. I'm sure he wants to go to Eurovision, and if he's got a good enough song, he's probably working on one right now as I speak. Maybe internally select him. Why not? Promote the song, do everything you need to do, and let him have his chance to shine for Malta in Sweden next year. The other option is that you internally select a musician, and you do have a national final in which the public, and perhaps a jury as well, select the song that they want out of 5 or 6 tracks. You could do something like that. Another option is that you just have one show with about 5 or 6 songs, something similar to UMK in Finland, and you have the public and jury have their say on who they want. So you could have, for example, Aidan as one of the artists. You could have Maxine Patch, who was involved in the national final earlier this year. She did quite well. You could have Brooke, who I'm surprised hasn't represented Malta yet. You could have a returning name, maybe somebody like Claudia Faniello, something like that. And you could have, I don't know, Ryan Hilly, who was the actual runner-up in Malta's selection earlier this year. That's 5 artists right there. 5 songs, let the public and a jury potentially decide which one they want. There are many different ways that you could go about this. Which one do I think is best? Honestly, if it was me, I would be going internal for the artist and the song. And I would be promoting the hell out of the artist and the song at the same time. I just think this national final format we've had in Malta this year, and indeed in the past, it's fine, but I do question the quality and whether it's really the right way to go. If Malta ever want to win this competition, you've just got to up your game, and it's easier said than done, and I'm starting to ramble big time here, so I'm going to wrap it up and say that I do think Malta need to twist. You can't really see this, but I'm making a note of it on this green post-it note. I think Malta need to twist and try something different next year. Go back to the X Factor Malta, get your winner, and then get a really, really great song, ideally written by a couple of Maltese individuals. That would be nice. Anyway, let's move on. Serbia, I think they should stick. Their national final format's pretty good. I don't think you need as many songs, but I think this year, certainly I didn't really recognise it at the time for whatever reason. I think it's because I was focusing on other countries instead. But actually, the quality of Serbia's national selection was pretty darn high. And more of the same next year. Don't see any reason to change it, to be honest with you. What we had this year is a fairly risky entry by Luke Black, a song that wasn't going to be everybody's cup of tea. And the same could be said for last year's entry as well by the same country, Constractor and Incorpore Sano. So what I'd like to see moving forwards from Serbia is this move even further into original pieces of music, maybe daring, risky type entries, songs that are going to be fairly divisive, because you could be onto something very special sooner rather than later. I mean, Constractor did very well. OK, Luke Black finished in the bottom 3, but a lot of people still really enjoyed that song. More of the same, I think, moving forwards, and songs in Serbian. That leads me back to Malta. If you're going to have a national final, 50% of the songs, in my opinion, if I was in charge, should be in Maltese. Moving on to Latvia. Oh boy. Well, Latvia keep using Supernova, and it's not getting them anywhere. And do I think it should be scrapped? Not really. It's just the quality of the songs. Personally, I just don't think it's good enough. I'm never that impressed. When I sit down to film a video for my channel where I listen to snippets of the songs in contention for Latvia, which I've been doing for a good few years now, I'm never that impressed. I'm never going into that reaction expecting to hear something truly top-notch. And I also have to question, number one, what the juries in Latvia are listening to, and number two, what the public are listening to. I know that sounds really, really rude, but earlier this year we had that sort of pre-qualification round, and two of the songs that I really enjoyed were by Adriana, I think her name was, I can't quite recall, and Inspo, and they were knocked out straight away, and I was thinking, what is going on here? That's two decent tracks, not even making it through to the Supernova final. So I do question some of the decision making in Latvia, I have to say. But this year it was a step in the right direction. Sudden Lights, very credible act with a very credible song that only just missed out on the final. And what I'm thinking next year is, it's a similar situation with Malta. Maybe internally select an artist. Marcus Riva is there. Take pity on the poor guy and eternally select him maybe. And have a whole bunch of songs for them, and the public and maybe a jury decide which one is best for next year's Sweden-based competition. So I do think Latvia need to twist it ever so slightly. Ever so slightly. Just a little bit of a change to the Supernova format. And I don't know if they use songwriting camps in Latvia or songwriting camps elsewhere to find songs for a Latvian national selection, but something's got to give, because the quality is not good enough. It's not competitive enough. Maybe you get somebody like Aminata back, maybe you get somebody like Justs back, although he was back this year and didn't do very well. I don't know. It's difficult. I mean, Sudden Lights, they were involved a few years ago. More than once, I think. I can't quite remember, but they were involved at least once a few years ago. And a lot of people liked the song back then, a lot of people liked this year's entry, but it just wasn't the sort of song, for me at the very least, it wasn't the sort of song that I was listening to and thinking, yes, this is going to do so well. And what I want next year is to hear a Latvian song that I feel pretty much straight away is definitely going to do the business. The quality's got to be higher. It's just got to be higher. And I think Latvia's just lagging behind a little bit in terms of a quality national final. I'm really not wording this terribly well, but hopefully you can see what I mean. Portugal, it's going to be a stick. I think FDC has improved quite significantly actually, especially since Amar Pelos Deutsch won back in 2017. I think that was a turning point for Portugal at Eurovision. I think the quality in FDC is generally pretty good. There does seem to be quite a few discrepancies every year. The juries like songs the public don't, the public likes songs the juries don't. Especially this year, it was a little bit topsy-turvy. But nevertheless, stick with FDC. Ireland. That national final is not a national final. It's crap. It's just part of a late-night chat show. That's no good. If you're going to have a national final, have a damn national final. Have it in a different venue, promote the hell out of it, really big it up. Maybe have more than one live show, not just the actual final itself. I don't really know. But Ireland's form at Eurovision is atrocious. And again, like with Latvia, something's got to give. And we know that Ireland can do the business because we had Ryan O'Shaughnessy a few years ago. We know Latvia can do the business because they had Heartbeat and Love Injected not that long ago, less than a decade ago. So we know these countries can pull something special out of the bag. In Ireland, if I was in charge, I'd be keeping the national final, but I wouldn't be having it as part of the Late Late Show. I'd be having it completely separate from that. I would be having an international jury. Did we have one this year? I can't quite remember. I think we did. So I'd be having an international jury, an Irish jury, and the public having their say. So really I wouldn't be changing much at all, actually. I'd be having 5 different competitive tracks. I mean, we had a sort of rap song in the Irish selection earlier this year, which was nice to see, even if it wasn't a song I was very keen on myself. And then we had Public Image Limited, and that song was only there because of who was singing it. No doubt about it in my mind. That song shouldn't have been anywhere near a blasted national final, in my personal opinion. But at least it brought a little bit of something different to the lineup. Anyway, I think it's quite shameful that Ireland have only ever had one entry at Eurovision in their own language. So I would be putting something out there and saying, look, we're going to have this national final next year. It's going to be a little bit different than what we're used to. There's going to be 5 or 6 songs involved. We're going to have a very well-known Irish act. We're going to have a male soloist, female soloist, band, all of that good stuff. And at least, if we're going to have 6 songs, at least 2 of them are going to be in the Irish language. We are looking for Irish language tracks. And we had Connolly this year. She was great. More music like that, something that's low-key, chilled out. Maybe that song wouldn't have done the business at Eurovision, but that song to me felt typically Irish. And I think Ireland do excel when they send a song that feels like that, if you see what I mean. I mean, even Together by Ryan O'Shaughnessy, that sounded to me a little bit typically Irish. I don't know about you, but it did to me. And I'm hoping we get more stuff like that moving forwards. So I would say Ireland, not a whole lot, like with Latvia, but I do think they need to change it up a bit. So twist for Ireland. Croatia, they may as well stick with what they've got. I wouldn't have as many songs, maybe, but it sort of worked for them this year. Let 3 came along, massive band, got Croatia back in the final for the first time in ages, and got Croatia's best results for the first time in many, many years. They finished, mid-table. So, pretty good. Wouldn't really change a thing. And it's definitely a stick in Croatia's case. As for Switzerland, I would also stick. They're going internal. They're using songwriting camps. Fair enough. I'm always a little bit wary of songwriting camps. I'm not sure if any of the songwriters of Switzerland's entry this year, Watergun, were actually Swiss. Could be wrong, but it would be nice to have a Swiss songwriting team for the Swiss entry next year. Remo was on the Swiss version of The Voice or something, was he not? And I wouldn't be surprised if they just go down that route again. It is what it is. But stick. I don't think anything really needs to change. Switzerland are becoming regular qualifiers now, which is nice to see. As for Israel, well, they've alternated in the past. Noah Kirel was internally chosen. And because she did really well, it's going to be a stick for Israel. To get somebody so successful, so young, so promising, I think that was a real coup for the Israeli broadcaster. And honestly, next year they should try and do it again. So if there's another great, fairly young, successful Israeli musician who might fancy Eurovision next May, give them a phone call and see what they say. Maybe Noah Kirel herself could be some sort of mentor to next year's Israeli representative. I know that we've had that Rising Star show in Israel as well, and that was fairly successful, even though that dragged on for weeks and weeks and weeks. But the fact that Noah Kirel was internally chosen, the song was sort of internally selected, we waited a long, long time for it, but she delivered the goods. She finished 3rd in Liverpool, so stick with Israel. And Doron Medali, one of the songwriters, he co-wrote Toy. I think he worked on Made of Stars by Hovi Star back in 2016. I think he co-wrote Golden Boy in 2015. He has been at Eurovision quite a few times now as the Israeli songwriter or co-songwriter. So he's a bit of a lucky charm, maybe. Keep him involved, perhaps. Moldova, that's going to be a stick as well. My God, some of the songs we get out of Moldova, though, are absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible, there's no doubt about it. But, we are all very much aware that even if the Moldovan national selection is a complete mess, the song that usually wins is transformed beyond belief in time for Eurovision. I mean, Soarele și Luna is a great song, it's very catchy stuff. Pasha Parfeni had been at Eurovision before, he had Eurovision pedigree, he knew what he was doing, looked very comfortable on stage, and they certainly elevated this enough from the Moldovan national final performance a few months ago for the Eurovision stage in Liverpool. It looked good. He was in the final, got a fairly decent result. So more of the same. More of the same, I would say. I'd like to see more originality in terms of the lineup, though. Pasha Parfeni, Sunstroke Project, Aliona Moon, Stob Shistub. Okay, we've been there, done that. Let's have some new, fresh blood in the Moldovan lineup next year. And what would be nice is to hear a song that already feels ready for Eurovision. I mean, Soarele și Luna sort of was. But I'd like to hear a song that really, really, really seems ultra polished from the word go. And I know we had Sugar a few years ago, but that was internally chosen, I believe. So in terms of a national final, it would be great to have songs that are just bang on the money from the very first time we hear them. And hopefully the national final, in terms of the way it's presented, can improve as well moving forwards. Did I make a note about Moldova? I think I did. Moving on, Sweden are going to stick with Melfest, but by God, if I was in charge of Melfest, first things first, I would have 50% of the songs be in Swedish. That might already be a rule anyway, I'm not sure. I'd have 50% of the songs, and this would probably be the case in any national final, 50% of the songs must be written by the person who's singing it. I think they introduced a rule a few years ago where 50% or something of the songs had to be written by or co-written by a woman. I don't know if that rule is still in place or whether it was ever implemented in the first place, but maybe I'd have something like that as well. And diversity. Diversity. You know what's going to happen next year. We're going to have, 32 names? 28 names? I can't even remember. We're going to have a lot of people involved. I think it's 28. And you know that at least half of them will have been in Melfest before, which is fine if they've got a banging track. If they haven't got a banging track, it's goodbye. I'd like to see more newcomers in Melfest, and maybe we're sort of getting there. I mean, we had Ida Lova this year. That was a fantastic track that she had, didn't qualify. We had... I can't even remember. I'm starting to ramble big time now, but there's a lot of great up-and-coming musicians in Sweden, so I'd like to see Melfest sort of nurture them and help them get going in their careers, pretty much. I don't want to see Loreen come back again, unless she's a songwriter. She doesn't need to come back as a musician front and centre. I don't really want to see Robin Bengtsson again. You know, I don't really want to see... Paul Ray keeps coming back. With all due respect to the guy, he ain't winning Melfest. Jon Henrik Fjallgren, his chance is gone. So, new talent, new names. That's what was great about Cornelia Jacobs. Okay, she'd been in Melfest before, but she sort of, in a way, came out of nowhere to win that show and do really well in Turin. More of the same. Azerbaijan... I do think they should stick with the internal selection. I'd like to hear a song in Azeri next year. And fair play to Azerbaijan, because they took a risk this year, tried something different. The two brothers, they'd written it as well. They didn't just bring in a couple of Scandinavian songwriters to do the work for them. Stick with what you're trying, and hopefully at some point you'll get rewarded for it, because this year Azerbaijan didn't qualify. Czechia, more of the same, but improve that national final, because it looked like it was taking place in somebody's garage for 2023. So really improve the quality. It was supposed to be televised, and it never really was. I don't know what happened there. But yeah, absolutely ramp up the quality of the national final in terms of its aesthetic, and keep the song quality the same. We had a good song go to Eurovision this year, My Sister's Crown. Pam Rabbit was second, she was great. Rodan, Introvert Party Club, that was pretty good as well. Yeah, not bad at all. So keep improving year upon year. And have more songs in Czech as well. Netherlands, there's a lot of talk here about having a national final. To me, that shouts disaster, because back in the day when I started paying attention to national finals and things, the Netherlands weren't really bringing a lot of quality to the table, in my personal opinion. So honestly, I would actually stick with internal. I really, really would. But I would twist it ever so slightly. I've put Netherlands in the stick column. But I would twist it ever so slightly, because we've had Steen, S10, we've had Mia and Dion. We had Jongu. We had Duncan. We had Waylon twice because he was part of the Common Linnets as well. Next year, it's time for something different. A straight up pop bop. Or, and I've been crying out for this for a long time now, a rock song. A Dutch rock metal type track. Bring it. I'd love to see it. So, if you're going internal next year, it is time for a very different sounding song, and you should be actively looking for different sounding songs. If you're going to have a national final, 1 or 2 shows, plenty of diversity, half of the songs should be in Dutch at the very least, it's time to move away, I do think now, from these very nice, slowish efforts into something fairly different. Finland, more of the same. Don't change a thing because you're on to something very, very good indeed. Let's move on now to the second semi-final, and I'll try to rattle through this. Denmark, they're sticking with DMGP. But it's like Latvia, the quality's not particularly high. You know, I usually like Denmark's entries at Eurovision, I really do. But I hold my hands up. You know, the quality isn't exactly through the roof. We need more songs in Danish. We need more risk-taking. Again, I mean, look at Finland. You know, Cha 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 was a risk, but it paid off. I'm not saying that would work for every country, but Denmark, let's move away now. You know, we had Riley, we had Reddy, we had Uvros Pahinanden a couple of years ago. Let's try something really different. Let's have a song that's really going to get people talking. You know, when was the last time Denmark had an entry where people were just absolutely gassed to see it at Eurovision? It's been a long, long time. So next year I'd like to see something, I'd like to hear something that just blows me away right away. Moving on to Armenia, Stick. Again, internal selection. Brunette. It's like with Israel, actually. Fairly young female performer, rising star, doing very well for themselves. Brunette was in the final, got a pretty decent result for Armenia. More of the same. Athena Manukian, maybe select her again if she wants to do it. Romania, twist. Twist, ever so slightly. I would go back to the format we had a couple of years ago with Roxanne. This was in 2020. It was her with several songs, and then the public decided which one they wanted, and Alcohol You would have gone to Eurovision, but the contest was cancelled because of COVID. Something like that again. Internally select an artist, and then have a national final full of songs. Really good songs, of course. I mean, we've had people like Bella Santiago in the past. Maybe get somebody like Ilinka back, or Alex Florea back. I don't really know. But there was controversy about the Romanian selection this year, and the quality wasn't very high in the first place. So, yeah, absolutely, something needs to change. So, for Romania, it's a bit of a twist, I think. Moving on to Estonia, stick with Ace Laul. No real need to change anything there, I don't think. Definitely we've had diversity in the past, and more of the same. If Estonia ever did go internal, I think it's pretty clear to me that they should pick Kerli, who of course, in my opinion, should have represented Estonia back in 2017, but we move on. Belgium. Now it alternates between the Flemish broadcaster and the French language broadcaster. This year we had a national final. I would go back to an internal selection myself. I really would. And I'd perhaps be looking at a band again. I know we had Hooverphonic not so long ago, but I'd be probably looking for a band again. Or a young female singer. We had Blanche, we had Laura Tesoro. They did very well. So I'm actually going to put Twist for Belgium, because even though they did quite well this year, a top 10 result against the odds, very impressive. I would personally go back to an internal selection. There we are. Cyprus, are they having a national final next year? I want to say they are. I'm not entirely sure. First things first, do not just go down the bring in a couple of Scandinavians to write the song for us. I mean, look at these Cypriot songwriters. Jimmy Jansson, who co-wrote Tattoo. He co-wrote Break a Broken Heart. Jimmy, I mean, come on. This was surely a rejected Melfest track. We don't want that. Goodbye. Where are the Cypriot songwriters? I want to see them. I want to hear them. Maybe get Alexandros Panai involved again. He's been involved tons of times before. Get him involved. Maybe get one of your former junior Eurovision representatives. See if they want to do it. I don't know. Cyprus, no national final. I would stick with internal. But I would absolutely get Cypriot songwriters involved. We move on to Iceland. Stick. It's another stick. I know that this is pretty one-sided now, but Iceland have Song for Kepnin. I don't really think it needs to change. Less is more. Greece. Yeah, this is a pretty interesting one. We've had both formats in the past with some success. We had an internal choice this year, sort of, and Greece didn't qualify. Yeah, I don't know. I think actually for next year I probably would have a national final, but maybe as it was years ago with maybe only about 3 or 4 songs involved. So I'm going to say twist for Greece. Yes, indeed. Poland, stick with the national final, but sort out those dodgy juries. It's as simple as that. Margaret. She should represent Poland at some point. I've been saying it for a long, long, long time. If she wants to do it, give her a call. Slovenia. Well, Slovenia scrapped their national final this year, internally selected Joker out, and it got them back in the final. So maybe stay internal? I don't really know. If they do go back to EMA, just have the one show, just have a few songs. Less is more. Look at Finland as a great example of this. I am going to say twist for Slovenia. I think they should go back to the national final. But this result this year, okay, it was in the bottom half, but it got Slovenia back in the final, Carpe Diem. So next year, hopefully, a lot more people are going to be interested in Eurovision in Slovenia, and they're going to want to try to represent their country. Georgia, I would still go internal, absolutely. This year was a step in the right direction, although Iru didn't qualify with Echo, and the lyrics were a bit dodgy, but we can move past that. I would still stick with an internal selection. I really would. And more of the same. You know, this year's song was very credible. So next year, you know, go that one step further and maybe have a song that can get Georgia back in the final and maybe get them a really good result. As for San Marino, I'd stick with the national final, but I'd really shorten it. Come on now. If you're a music professional, you know a good song when you hear one. And some of the songs in the San Marino national selection, they just weren't good enough. And in my opinion, they shouldn't have been there in the first place. So it's all well and good having loads and loads of songs, but ultimately only one's going to come out on top. Fair play to San Marino for having a national final in the first place. The quality is so-so, there's no doubt about that. Maybe the wrong song won this year, but it is what it is. 0 points in Liverpool, great shame. Didn't actually think it was that bad a performance by Pete Jacks, but there we are. Yes, it's going to be a stick, absolutely, with San Marino, but I'd probably have a lot less shows in the selection. And I'd really, really try as well to have more people from San Marino, and indeed the sort of the surrounding area in Italy, of course. Something I'm surprised hasn't happened. I think this might have happened in the past. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else here, maybe Andorra. But I would have San Marino team up with RAI, the Italian broadcaster. Maybe team up with them, and maybe somebody from Sanremo enters the San Marino national selection if they want to. Maybe somebody who finishes towards the bottom of Sanremo. Maybe they can enter the Italian selection, maybe with the same song. I don't even know if that's possible. But yeah, that would be a nice little partnership, and it could work. It could work. As for Austria, stay internal. I know they use songwriting camps this year. Okay, the result wasn't sensational, but at least Austria were back in the final. Really trying to rattle through this now. Albania, stick with what they've got. Fic, I think, is ever so slightly becoming more modern, but to me it's still very old-fashioned. So I'd like to hear a few more modern sounding tracks. You know, we always have a revamp. It would be nice if we didn't get a revamp one year. It would be nice if we had a song that was already ready to go, if you see what I mean. Lithuania, I'd stick with the national final format. They've definitely reduced the amount of live shows over the past year or two, which is pretty good. And I'd like to see, yeah, again, plenty of diversity. It's as simple as that. Australia, I would stick with the internal selection myself. Sort of worked this year. Australia were back in the top 10 in the final. Next year, if Australia are back, if they sign a new contract, I'm sure that's going to happen. I'd like to see a really, really big name for Australia next year. Not necessarily Dami Eam, who has said in the past she'd like to do it again. Or somebody like Kylie Minogue, who's never going to do it. But a really big name. Then we have France. I'd stick in with internal for France. It's as simple as that. Germany. Oh boy. That's a tough one. It's a tough one. Ben Dolic. Is he available? Does he want to do it? Michael Schulte. Would he want to do it again? Germany can produce the goods. Like with Latvia. Like with Malta. It has happened. Like with Ireland. It has happened. Why is it so infrequent? Germany has a big rock scene. We had a sort of rock metal type song this year from Lord of the Lost. They finished last. That was very harsh. There must be musicians in Germany who really want to do this and are very, very serious about it and would absolutely be willing to try their hand in a national final or something like that. I would probably... I mean, Portugal, they invite composers, don't they? So maybe I'd do that in Germany, I don't know. I mean, you've got to ask. You don't know unless you ask. Hi, are you interested? Yes, I am. Great, we'll see you in a few weeks' time. You've got to ask. Yeah, so maybe I'd do that. I would call up a few people and say, look, are you interested in this? Have you got a song? Are you willing to write a song? Blah, 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 all of that stuff. I would twist it ever so slightly. I would probably go internal if the right song came along. Or I would have some sort of national final with just a few songs, but big names. I really would have big names. I'm not like Rammstein, but hey, if they wanted to do it, you know that would generate a ton of buzz. And they would not finish last at Eurovision, I'm sure. So I would like to see a big German act next year. Because desperate times, desperate measures, maybe a major name is the way to go. It doesn't always work. Engelbert Humperdinck, Bonnie Tyler for the UK, hello. But in Germany's case, I think to drum up more interest, to really get people excited for Germany at Eurovision again, a big, big name with a massive song. Italy, stick with Sanremo, nothing needs to change there. Spain, Benidorm Fest, I think, is the way to go, stick with that. Ukraine, stick with Vidbir, seems to be very successful for them. And the UK, I would also stay internal. I would be looking at a band next year. We've had Sam Ryder, we've had May Muller, maybe an up-and-coming band, or a band that are pretty good, but maybe still sort of fly under the radar a little bit, you know? Maybe they don't have huge amounts of attention in the press and things like that. Somebody like London Grammar, maybe. They've had a couple of #1 albums, I think, but they still sort of fly under the radar. You know, if you asked people to name loads of great British musicians and bands, maybe London Grammar wouldn't be one of the first ones that people name. If you see what I mean, I'm starting to ramble big time, but somebody like London Grammar, Wolf Alice, they're arguably too famous, Twin Atlantic, Maisie Peters, Nina Nesbitt, Mabel, oh my god, there's so many. There's so many up-and-coming musicians in the UK, and some of them are very, very, very good. So, give them a call. You don't know if you don't ask. And right now, even though it's only been a few weeks since the Liverpool competition, I would be getting on the phone, and I'd be getting on my computer. I'd be sending emails out. I'd be sending, I'd be ringing people up and saying, look, the search begins now. Are you interested? Let me know, and then we can work on something. So there we go. Long story short, most countries should stick with their current format. Some countries should change their current format, and some countries it's sort of in between. They should either stick with what they've got but change a few elements of it, or they should change their format but do retain some elements that they've had in the past, if you see what I mean. So there we go. Absolutely wonderful. What a long-winded video. My voice is hurting. I think it's time for a cup of tea. Hopefully the quality of this video wasn't too bad. Let me know your thoughts. You can feel free to leave a whole list in the comments if you like, or contact me via my other social media pages. Stick or twist? What should happen for your country next year? What would you like to happen? What will you think will happen? Yes. And who would you like to see represent your country next year? If you're Swedish, who is the dream, realistic Swedish representative in your country next year? Or maybe you're from the UK like me. Who is a realistic possibility for 2024? Maybe I'll make a video all about that moving forwards. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Apologies for the messiness of this video. Take care, and bye for now.